Hey folks, thanks for joining us today. Welcome to our final State of the Industry update of 2023. We have lots to cover today. There are a lot of new changes coming to the HERS industry in 2024. So really excited to get this started for you today. I'm going to pass the mic over to David Pedrick, Product Manager at Ecotrope, and he'll start digging into everything we have for today.
All right, thank you, Sarah. We'll get started right away. We already have about 80 folks on the call, so a few more will trickle in here as we get started. But like Sarah said, we're going to be talking a lot about what's coming up in 2024. Today's agenda, we're going to cover first a little bit about Ecotrope, and then we're going to talk about what's on the horizon and do a little bit of data analysis on homes built in 2023 and projecting them into 2024 to talk about what performance may look like moving into the next year. This is going to be a challenge all day today to use the correct year, 1 month or half a month ahead of time. We know that it's always hard to get used to that, so I'll do my best here to keep those years straight. But we're going to be talking about the ResNet Carbon Index. We're going to talk about version 2 of DOE Zero Energy Ready Homes, version 3.2 of Energy Star, progress on IECC 2024, and then finally a little bit about 2021 IECC as well, as we can move into kind of what can you do to prepare and some questions and answers. So feel free to type in questions whenever you want throughout this session, and we will curate those and answer those at the end of the session here as well. I already see somebody's put a question in there. And if there's any audio or visual issues, please let us know and we'll get those addressed so everybody can hear and see the presentation. So a little bit about Ecotrope. We're a HERS rating company, or HERS rating software company. About 1 in 4 new homes use our software over any given year. So about 300,000 homes have used Ecotrope to calculate a HERS index, a utility rebate, or an energy code compliance document. And that means over our history, about 1.3 million homes have used Ecotrope. We also the top provider of 45L tax credits, and we support over 50 utility programs across the country. And we're working on building a platform for HERS raters, for builders, for utilities, and product manufacturers, so that they can all use the same set of data to make decisions about the built environment to drive towards more energy efficient and low carbon construction. So that's what our mission is. We're really focused on raters and expanding out into those other product categories at the moment. So we're going to talk about what's on the horizon for 2024. And with that, there's a lot coming on board for this coming year. First, actually at the end of this year, the carbon index was released, and we supported it and released it in Ecotrope Rater. And so we see that taking having a bigger impact in this coming year. HERS H2O will also be completed and released in Ecotrope Rater this coming year as well. There's already a few thousand homes that get this rating today, and we expect that to grow over the next year as well. We also are going to talk about the Energy Star version 2, and this version is going to be required very soon to earn that 45L tax credit, which may speed along some of the requirements for these other programs as well, for builders who want to participate in that program. Other things that are happening this year is builders are going to start thinking about Energy Star version 3.2 because of that tricky acquired date in the 45L tax credit. So homes purchased in 2025, skip a whole year forward, have to meet Energy Star version 3.2 in order to earn that tax credit. So that means builders are starting to plan for this program already, and they'll start to have to meet this program and build homes that meet this program in 2024. So I'm sure everybody's starting to prepare and plan for that future date of selling homes in 2025. Finally, the 2 IECC programs we're going to talk a little bit about and are happening this year. IECC 2021 is gaining a lot more steam, and a lot more states and municipalities have adopted a version of that code. So it's becoming a much more prevalent standard. And it's also the baseline for these other programs as well. So there's a lot of layering that's happening where one change is causing you to focus on some of these other things that are also changing this year. And finally, IECC 2024 will be released this year, likely in the next couple months. And some states are already thinking about adopting it. So there's a lot going on in 2024, and we'll talk a little bit more here in detail about the Carbon Index, Zero Energy Ready version 2, Energy Star, and the IECC codes. So first off, we're going to talk about the Carbon Index. So what is the Resonant Carbon Index? It's an index similar to the HERS index, and it's newly developed by Resonant and released in this past year. The index shows carbon savings or carbon emission savings compared to a 2006 home baseline. And it uses projected utility emission data that's projecting out into the future. Resonant developed this because they needed something that was more specifically targeted at carbon. And this is operational carbon only. It's not embodied carbon. So it's just half of that picture. And the HERS index is really a good benchmark to measure relative energy efficiency. But the carbon index really hones in on the greenhouse gas emissions portion of home performance. We're going to cover how the index is calculated, the analysis of carbon index for homes built from 2020 to 2023. We have a unique perspective on this because we were able to retroactively calculate the carbon index for all of those homes in the past, because the carbon index doesn't actually require any additional data fields or any additional inputs than the HERS index. So we have a really interesting retroactive look at all of those homes. We're also going to talk about how regional differences in grid performance impact the index and how utility programs can leverage this moving forward. So first off, a little bit about how the index is calculated. The carbon index follows an identical methodology as the HERS index. Both index compare the performance of an as-built or HERS proposed home against a reference home. So the index is calculated by dividing the reference home's carbon emissions by the proposed home's carbon emissions. And that gives you a fraction, and you multiply that fraction by 100 to give you the index. And it's rounded to an integer. This means that 100 indicates that the home performs at the same level as that reference home, and a 0 means it has 0 carbon emissions. One of the key differences here, though, is that the HERS index reference home is different than the carbon index reference home is different than the HERS index reference home. The carbon home is all electric in the reference home. So that means any home that has mixed fuel is going to be penalized slightly because it's being compared to a home with an all electric system. The other thing that's going to become more of a factor here is the location of the home. For HERS index, when we think about location, we think about the climate zone and weather data. We still think about that a little bit for the carbon index, but we're also going to be thinking about the utility region or the grid region that the home is built in for its location. The EPA has defined these regions and has measured the emission profile for each region. And each of those regions, is going to use the same emissions profile for homes built in that region. The EPA has done this study and the DOE has done the study to understand over any given season, what is the emissions factor for that grid, and also over any given hour in any given day, what the emission profile is. So using the hourly data from a HERS model, you can figure out what the emission factor is for that home over that entire year. So that's one way that location is really going to become important. We're going to have a map of the grid regions here in a little bit to look at that. But it's going to be something that we're going to be looking at probably occasionally. because if you move a house from one grid region to the other, it's built exactly the same. The carbon index will change from one location to the next. The other important piece here is the piece about mixed fuel home types. So if a home has gas heat and electric AC, it's going to be compared to a home that has electric heat and electric AC. And so that's going to immediately have an impact on the home's carbon index. Unless, of course, the electricity grid is very, very dirty, but that's not ever the case here. So let's dive into the data here a little bit and look at CO2 index for homes built in 2023. The nice thing is we can calculate this retroactively and look at all these homes. And so homes built in 2023, the average index was 82. And the states with the highest index, and we're only looking at states that have more than 400 ratings in them, is Colorado, Utah, and Idaho. And the lowest indexes are in New Jersey, Maryland, and Florida. Florida likely because there's a lot of homes that are all electric. So kind of giving it that benefit from the get-go. So that's a little bit of frame of reference here for our CO2 index. We're going to also talk about how the CO2 index relates to the HERS index. So this slide here, we've built to kind of help us develop a little intuition about how the index will be calculated. We all kind of have a little sense of what a home's HERS index should be, and we're going to have to start building that intuition for the CO2 index here as well. This data, there's two charts here. On the left is all electric homes from 2023, and on the right are homes that have gas and electric appliances. We're going to look at the one on the right first, a little bit more orientation here. You'll see a red dashed line, and that red dashed line indicates if a home, each home is one dot on this chart. If a home is right on that red dashed line, that means the HERS index equals the CO2 index. It has the same CO2 and same HERS index. So if we look at the chart on the right, which is the mixed fuel homes, almost entirely all of them have a better HERS index than a CO2 index. So if you were to be thinking about a home and you know the HERS index and you know it's mixed fuel, you can almost be certain that the HERS index will be better than the CO2 index of that home. And it's very, very rare that it's not the case. So in many cases, the HERS index is much, much better. Then on the left-hand side, we have the all electric homes, and those have a closer to a normal distribution of some homes have better HERS, some homes have better CO2 index. And so those homes show a little bit more variability of how individual parameters of the home impact the CO2 and HERS index. So a little bit about the grid regions. This is a map that has all of the grid regions, and each region is colored by the average CO2 index in that region. It's interesting, California and the West and Midwest kind of score the worst, and the South and Southeast are pretty good with the CO2 index. So this is interesting because this is looking at homes that didn't know they were going to get a CO2 index, so they weren't optimizing for that in any way. And this is how the results were calculated. And this is going to impact or reflect some of the grid emission factors as well here. So places that have really clean grids, naturally the HERS index or the carbon index is going to be a little bit lower or a little bit higher because it's going to be showing a really specific, just the efficiency improvement of that home. So you may have situations where the HERS index or the carbon index is different for the same home in Texas and California, where you'd think that maybe one should be better than the other, but it comes back to kind of how we're comparing homes against its specific location and trying to drive towards a tool that really hones in on getting carbon savings for that specific home in that specific location. You may want to reference this map more often if you're building homes or rating on homes that are close to those boundaries of utility regions, particularly Georgia and South Carolina is going to have a really big factor down in Charleston down on the coast. So a little bit more, looking at past homes, this is for homes all the way back to 2020. And again, we've split the homes out between all electric and mixed fuel homes. And this is to continue to kind of help us understand, have an intuitive sense of the CO2 index. You'll notice that all electric homes, the CO2 score and the HERS index really track close to each other. And they're basically move in parallel. As the HERS index goes down, the CO2 index goes down. On the other hand, for the mixed fuel homes, one, the CO2 score is immediately much higher, and the CO2 score is actually decreasing more, even though the HERS index isn't over time. So this actually shows there's a lot of potential there, of course, moving from gas appliances to electric appliances to drive that down closer to where the trend line is for the all electric homes. This could be interesting data for utility rebate programs as well. Utilities often have demand side management programs, and those programs may have goals to reduce carbon emissions or reduce actual electricity use or demand to avoid large capital expenditures. But if their goal really is to reduce carbon emissions, or a gas utility is trying to kind of reduce its carbon emissions by encouraging builders to build more efficient homes, and while still using mixed gas appliances, this metric could be used to build programs around that to measure carbon reductions rather than electricity or energy reductions quite effectively. The other piece here that it's interesting that since we have back data, we can also probably measure program effectiveness fairly well as well. So we can see a clear before and after, like before anybody was aware of anything, what the carbon index is, and then the impact of any program afterwards once they start thinking about driving down the carbon index. All right, so we're going to talk about what are next steps builders and utilities can take to utilize this carbon index. And first off, the carbon index is going to be a really good way for builders to report ESG savings and drive targeted emissions reductions. So as ESG reports become more important for builders, they may start thinking about using the carbon index rather than the HERS index to benchmark and measure that performance. Some key things to think about when helping them develop strategies to reduce their carbon intensity is electrify when possible. And once you've electrified, your HERS score and carbon index are going to move in sync fairly closely. But once you've done that, performing a gap analysis to determine areas of improvement to lower both is going to be really helpful for builders to continue benchmarking and moving their metrics forward. Second, utilities could use the carbon index rather than the HERS index for more targeted carbon emission reductions. Obviously, this depends on what their primary goals are, but it will be more targeted at your CO2 emissions rather than the energy emissions, if that is the true goal. And finally, understanding the differences between the calculations. We've given you a fairly brief explanation here, but we can go even deeper on how mixed fuel homes can hurt the carbon index, how PV is calculated in the calculation as well, and how batteries and on-site PV can really change that carbon index. So with that, we're going to transition to talking about Energy Star version 3.2. And in coming up in this coming year, we're going to start seeing more builders paying attention to this program. Like I said before, homes that are sold or acquired in the 45L language on January 1st of 2025 must meet Energy Star version 3.2. And 3.2 has some significant changes to it compared to 3.1 that are going to cause some friction in making that transition. The major changes that are happening are one, the ERI or HERS target is reducing, and there's a new thermal or UA backstop for the program. So it's going to be updated to IECC 2021 thermal backstop from where it was previously. So this is where these programs start to layer on top of one another. Energy Star is updating, but one of the key updates is updating to this new energy code, IECC 2021. With that, we want to do a little bit of a look at how homes perform, 2023 homes perform against this new version. So we looked at and analyzed all homes used Ecotrope in 2023, and we evaluated how many of those perform well enough to pass Energy Star version 3.2, and how many of them actually do pass version 3.2. From presentations past, you may remember this nuance that we use quite often, which is perform versus pass. Perform means that it meets or exceeds the ERI target index, and pass means that it does that, as well as meeting all of the other requirements of the program, like completing all of the checklists, the required inspections, the UA compliance, as well as some other electrification things. So this gives us an idea of, okay, which homes are, is the limiting factor the ERI score, and which homes have the ERI score in hand, but need to focus on those other QA checks, notably the UA requirements. And the ones that need to focus on the UA requirements, we're going to show a little bit more detail here, are the homes that make up the red sections of the bar. All of the green bars are homes that pass. So that means they meet the ERI, they meet the UA check, backstop, as well as all the other QA checks. The things in red are homes that meet the ERI score, but don't meet the other things. So as we were looking at this data, we were coming up with this assumption that it seems like the UA QA check, the UA backstop, is becoming a really big barrier. And this was informed, one, by this data, but also two, based on some analysis we did, as well as some anecdotal evidence we've heard from raters over time, that the UA backstop is really going to become a little bit more difficult to meet. So we're going to do a little more data analysis here to really hone in on, is that the key factor for meeting Energy Star version 3.2 in these homes? So what we did was we pulled homes that almost passed Energy Star and homes that do pass Energy Star. And we grouped those two sets of homes into their respective climate zone. So you'll see we have climate zones 1, 3, and 5 in our analysis. We didn't do all climate zones here. And so now we have a whole bunch of different groups. And for homes that just almost passed Energy Star in climate zone A, we clustered those using a statistical method to find homes that were similar to one another. And then we looked at homes that passed Energy Star in that same climate zone, clustered them together to form clusters of building specifications that are similar to one another. And now we have kind of a different building specs that are common for homes that fail Energy Star and homes that pass Energy Star. And this helps us see how builders and raters are doing trade-offs and grouping different specs together to achieve Energy Star. Once we've done that, we can then look to see what are the most common or the most frequent or actually most consistent across the board change from the failing homes to the passing homes. On this chart right here, we're showing what is the consistent difference between passing to or failing to passing for each of these climate zones. So we don't have the exact value of like what is the higher R values, but the thing that we wanted to highlight here is that almost every single time passing homes, have better wall insulation than, or better insulation values than failing homes. That to us, this was, we were expecting to see this, but also we were thinking that if the homes had similar specs in terms of wall insulation, maybe that indicates that it's not necessarily a hard thing to do, that they're achieving the compliance by other methods. But because we did see almost every single time, there are major changes to insulation values, it indicates that that is the place that people are going to cause or to find compliance pathways. So this leads us to this thought and this thesis that for Energy Star version 3.2, UA compliance is going to be a major focus area for analysis and a threshold to get people over to earn this tax credit moving forward. One way people have been analyzing this is looking at using the IECC UA compliance pathway QA checks to drive towards compliance with this program, in addition to the Energy Star target compliance QA checks. So with all this talk about the IECC 2021 UA backstops, let's talk more about where 2021 is going into effect and 2024, and talk a little bit about 2024 as well. So first off, IECC 2021 is gaining in popularity. There's a number of states, the ones highlighted in green here, that have adopted a version of the IECC code. And the states in stripes have cities that have adopted an IECC 2021 version. And in fact, Illinois is also in the process or has already done the same adoption for 2021. So these are states that have fairly large building economies: Texas, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, Florida, Washington, all have lots of homes built in these states. So a large portion of homes are going to be built in places that must meet IECC 2021. And there are some states that are currently working on adopting IECC 2021 into a stretch code that says cities can opt into that as an additional performance compliance pathway. All of these updates should help raise the floor of performance across these states and make it less of a jump from code minimum to Energy Star, to make the Energy Star kind of additional work you have to do a little bit more palatable for 3.2. So that's one reason Energy Star keeps updating, is to stay ahead of code. And as these places adopt 2021, the gap between those two is a little bit smaller, which helps builders bridge the gap from code to Energy Star and 45L compliance as well. However, if we actually start looking at the number of homes built in 2023 that actually pass IECC 2021, the number is still relatively small, which makes sense because all of the green bars are homes that pass this energy code. And many of these homes, though, do perform well enough to pass the energy code. There's in this chart, only 16,000 of the homes pass, but there's many thousand here. Everything that is 5% or better to the right perform well enough to meet the energy code. And they don't, because they don't meet a QA check like completing the 2021 checklist and However, as we see more states requiring it, we're going to see the ones that actually pass increase. And this is the kind of the total market for homes that could be good candidates to earn the 45L tax credit, because we know they're already performing very well compared to one of the core requirements of Energy Star. There's some of the reasons why some of these homes don't pass the code, though, is that there's a few kind of key QA checks around mechanical ventilation and window requirements, and the little buffer around additional energy efficiency measures if you're only exceeding the buffer by 5% or less. So this is kind of the total window of homes that are meeting the code and could, have a good shot at becoming Energy Star certified. We think this will increase, though, as codes are adopting and as this other policy that may come online this year is finalized. Earlier this year, the Biden administration announced that they're going to require homes that use FHA or USDA mortgages to meet the IECC 2021. There's about 170,000 homes purchased that use one of those mortgage products. And the thing is, builders don't necessarily know if a home that they build is going to be purchased with one of these products when they start building the home. So this is still a proposal, but it could move the needle towards more homes going towards this code and kind of raising the bar of performance across the country. So this is one way that we're seeing codes move towards IECC 2021. But we also want to talk another place that was on that map of having cities that have adopted this code, and that's Texas. One of the major pieces of news in the HERS rating industry a few years ago was this Texas House Bill 3215. And what this legislation did was that it allowed or required all cities in Texas and all jurisdictions in Texas to have an alternative energy code compliance pathway, which was the HERS index. And that HERS index was set at a particular number that decreases every year. And the thought was that once cities start adopting IECC 2021, the energy code will be somewhat comparable to that HERS index threshold. So now that we see homes or see jurisdictions that are adopting 2021, we wanted to see if for homes built there, how is the compliance rates of homes that meet IECC 21 compared to HB 3215 HERS index target? Because the thought is, as those become comparable, builders will choose one or the other based on their preference. And if they choose HERS ratings more often, that means there's more HERS rating. HERS raters are working on that. And there's more HERS ratings done in the state of Texas as a result, and giving builders more options there. So looking at this data, we have this chart here, and we have IECC numbers of how many homes pass IECC 2021, and then how many of those homes also pass HB 3215. So I actually want to talk about the ones that fail IECC 2021 first. So of homes built in Texas, about 48,000 don't pass IECC 2021. However, of those homes, 63% of them pass the HB 3215 HERS target requirement for energy code. So if those homes were built in a city or jurisdiction that requires IECC 2021, it probably makes sense for a lot of them to go towards the HERS index compliance pathway. It makes sense for 63% of them too, because otherwise they would have to do a lot of work or do some work or make changes to meet that new energy code. So we do see that we would expect more HERS ratings in those jurisdictions, because they could gain energy code compliance without making many changes, because IECC is leapfrogged the HB 3215 requirement. So this kind of shows that how these new codes are layering on top of each other. But it also means that in those jurisdictions, will they still want to do IECC 2021 in order to prepare themselves for Energy Star? That's yet to be seen. So as Texas gets used to this new code in 3215, IECC is also releasing a new version of the code. And this is the 2024 vintage. So at the resident conference last month, there was an update on kind of where we are. And currently there will be a final draft released in January, this coming January, for IECC 2024. There are some key changes that are going to come with this new version, and we'll update those as soon as they're finalized. And this is another place that another new code's coming out. Obviously, many states take a few years before they adopt 2024, but the state of New York is even considering adopting it in the same year as the code is released. So some people, this will become very relevant very quickly. Now let's transition to DOE, Zero Energy Ready Home version 2. So starting January 1st, this version will be required for the 45L tax credit. There's some significant changes in this version compared to previous versions. First off, it's based on 3.2 Energy Star. And there's going to be two new versions. There's a single family version and a multifamily version. So we start to have these different programs for different housing types. However, the building envelope component requirements are going to be the same as Energy Star version 3.2, with the exception of window U values, which will be need to exceed Energy Star. A couple of the other updates, LED lighting is going to be increased from 80% to 100% requirements. And there's ERV and HRV requirements for climate zones 6 through 8. And an interesting update to this program is that homes will need to be wired and able to support heat pump water heaters, EVs, and air source heat pumps. So there's going to be some additions there that are somewhat new to builders. So we want to do the same thing we did for Energy Star and IECC, look at how many homes could pass this version of Zero Energy Ready Homes built in 2023. And the news is there's not a lot, actually. There's only about 12,000 homes that perform well enough, but don't cover all of the bases of compliances. So we're going to take a deep dive and look at kind of what's going on with those 12,000 homes. So if we look at this, here's a kind of flow chart for where all of those homes scatter throughout this kind of flow chart of pass-fail decision tree. So first off, sorry, I was mistaken, about 10,000 homes meet the performance buffer requirement. This means that it performs the target indexes high enough to pass, but the QHX may not. So if we look at this, we made some decisions on how to split the data into this flow chart. The first check that we made was how many of these homes actually pass Energy Star. Only about 30% of them do. So 3,000 pass, which keeps them in the ballpark in terms of passing DOE. Then we thought, let's split it up between the ERV and HRV requirements, because people commonly think that's a big expenditure for the builder there. So on the left are homes that not in climate zone 6 that don't have that new requirement. And on the right are homes that do have that new requirement. So if we go to the left, about 3,000 or 2,800 homes aren't in climate zone 6. The next decision point was how many of those meet the indoor air plus requirement, and that splits at about 50-50. However, splits 50-50, but the ones that do pass, very few of those pass the window U factor and the all electric ready QA checks. Only 11 of them do. So of the 10,000 that meet the performance buffer, only 11 actually pass and meet all of the QA checks here. Otherwise, they go to that fail category because they don't have the window U factor requirements. Now, if we go all the way to the other side here to look at the 250 homes in those climate zones, they all end up in the same place. The ones that still have an ERV, they also don't meet those window U factor and all electric ready QA checks. So this is kind of the story of here's the key decision points of a builder going through this this process to meet this energy or meet this program and earn that 45L tax credit. So in summary, let's kind of review the gaps in performance here. So first, many high performance homes fail that first Energy Star version requirement. And it's likely that the new UA backstop or other mandatory QA checks are the cause there. But then if that doesn't cause the home to fail, then there's the EPA Indoor Air Plus requirements. And then after that, the other key factor here is hot water, electrical, PV ready, and EV requirements for compliance. So really, these shouldn't be looked at like these are the things that are causing the homes to fail, but these are the opportunities of, hey, these are the things we need to really pay attention to earn the tax credit and get these builders to earn DOE Zero Energy version 2. So this is also kind of to suggest that all of these things are layered and there's many moving parts in 2024. IECC 2021 is becoming more prevalent and many homes perform well enough to meet this code. However, places like Texas may have a little bit of a release valve for compliance as builders make the decision of follow the I code or follow the HB 3215 route. But maybe this is tempered a little bit by the mortgage requirements from the USDA and FHA. So that's kind of the baseline. And as that more homes do IECC 2021, Energy Star version 3.2 comes on board and is reliant on that code as well. So it kind of increases the importance of understanding 2021 and meeting that I code. And finally, for homes that want to earn DOE Zero Energy Ready today, or 2024, it moves the timeline up for all of these things. It moves up the timeline for understanding Energy Star version 3.2, and it moves up the timeline for IECC, paying attention to that as well. So all of these things are related to each other and layered on top of each other. And finally, a few takeaways and recommendations. So for raters and builders, we've talked about this before, but doing a gap analysis to plan for these new codes and helping build a pathway to increase program compliance for your builders is really important. That gap analysis can build that pathway or that roadmap to meet these codes and understand what will have to happen when, if they're trying to achieve these codes. And then also that the carbon index and the HERS index can be really good for ESG reporting for builders, and raters can help them kind of get that information and get it in a place where it's easy and easily accessible to them. For utilities, understand the differences between the HERS index and carbon index, because the carbon index may be a really good tool using the exact same people and exact same program participants to drive your carbon reduction goals could be very useful. And looking at historical data to measure program effectiveness could be a really interesting way to kind of show real savings and real carbon reductions. So all of these things tied with these new programs should really inform the program development going forward in 2023. And finally, for building product manufacturers, all of these new codes are new opportunities to pitch and show your value proposition for driving energy efficiency in built environment. And in particular, a couple examples are for insulation manufacturers talking to builders interested in Energy Star and DOE. that insulation is really important if you're wanting to achieve those programs. Many products are really important there as well, but we're seeing that this is going to be a little bit higher focus in 2023. And then for HRV and ERV manufacturers, places adopting IECC 2021 and climate zones that require that may be a really good place to focus as those codes are adopted in those regions. So with that, I wanted to open up to Q&A. And if you have any questions, please type in the chat box and we'll do our best to answer here or answer later in an email response or to everybody when we send out this presentation. But I want to say thank you to everybody for attending, and we wish everybody a happy holiday season and happy new year. And we'll see folks in Q1 of 2024 with more updates on the HERS industry and the home construction industry. And we look forward to sharing more insights about how everybody's doing in energy performance for residential new construction. Sarah, can we go to some questions?
Yeah, absolutely. So it looks like we have a couple in here and we have enough time to go through them. So I'm just going to start at the top. David, if there is anything you can add to this. So basically just asking to discuss the new VA requirement and what report will be required. Can you shed any light on that?
Yeah, good question. So the VA, Veterans Association, Veterans Affairs requirement around, I'm not sure the exact requirement there, but there is a new rule out there that's tied to one of these energy codes for VA home loans. Unfortunately, I don't know that off the top of my head, but we can look that up and share that out, because that is going to be another one of those ways that I believe it's IECC 2021 is going to have more kind of reasons to follow that code along with the FHA and USDA loans, is that the VA loans also need to be for homes that buy, or for homes that comply with that program. Forgive me for not knowing that one off the top of my head, but we'll look that up and send it out.
Awesome, thanks. Next question, is there any chance you could output the green building addendum with the information in the rating file?
Gotcha, yeah. Right now the green addendum, I believe, is available from the ResNet building registry as a download. It's not available out of Ecotrope right now, but that's something that we're always looking at and considering what reports we need to add when. So we'll definitely add this to our backlog and prioritize it so that we can deliver that as well to help the appraisers understand the value of green building.
Awesome. Another question up here. Can you explain the difference between ERI and HERS and then how that relates to the carbon index?
Definitely. So ERI and HERS is like ERI would be a tissue and a HERS would be Kleenex. So one's the generic name, one's the brand specific name. And the carbon index is a HERS ANSI standard, I believe, but it's primarily developed by ResNet, and they make it an ANSI standard, so it's a public and goes through a public process to be created, but they're the ones that championed it and built it and are promoting it now. And so I think okay, so then I guess to follow up on that, HERS started out as a ResNet specific thing and it turned into a generic thing because ResNet championed it, making it a standard with ANSI. So it's kind of a similar process, ResNet championing these programs and then making them into standards that are public through public processes. So same story with carbon index.
Great, thanks. And then we have another question here, and I don't know that we necessarily went through this when we were doing the analysis for today's presentation, but could you maybe share any light on the top of your head of just What are some of the most commonly missed QA checklist items?
Oh, good question. No, we didn't analyze that for this presentation, but it would be really interesting data to have to know where people are really stumbling.
Yeah, definitely a great idea for, future presentations, maybe even a blog that we can put out about that. So I can make a note of that. And then it looks like we have one last question here. Is there any way to beta test our newer software pre-released? And what are the long-term AI integration plans for Ecotrope? Oh, wow.
All right. Those are some fun questions. Beta tests, in some cases, yes, we do release beta versions. Actually, we have a beta version out right now for a version of the software that people can test before it's officially released. So if you do go into Ecotrope, you can adjust the version to see future updates. In terms of AI, we are developing our AI plans. I'd say they're in their very nascent stage, but there's lots of opportunities out there to really change how the industry functions and improve workflows and improve how we deliver these services to builders and to raters. So I don't have anything I can share yet, but we do have a blog that we wrote, I think last year, about some different ideas that we were thinking about. So if you go there, read that blog and email us, and we're happy to chat about it.
Awesome. Thanks, David. And then last question here, just kind of generic, any updates on the carbon index, I guess, like as it relates to Ecotrope Radar, just in general?
Yeah, the carbon index is available in Ecotrope, and we're have any energy model in Ecotrope can calculate it. So there's full data looking all the way back to when Ecotrope entered the ResNet industry. And if you go into your Ecotrope account today, you can view the carbon index and calculate it and see how that relates to the HERS index.
Awesome. Thanks. Looks like that's all the questions we have for today. So thank you everyone so much for joining us for our last State of the Industry update of 2020. We'll be sending out the recording of today's session if you'd like to review it on your own time. And then if there are any other follow-up questions you have based on the Q&A we just had, please feel free to reach out to info@ecotrope.com. We'd be happy to provide more information and give you some more answers. And like David said earlier, happy holidays, have a happy new year, everyone. We look forward to see you all again in 2024. Thanks, everybody.